It is Friday, April 11th, 2025. Welcome to Short Shifts, part of the NHL Wraparound podcast. Vic Morren along with Neil Smith. And hey, some high drama at UBS Arena last night.
Oh, high drama, yes, and a almost a baker's dozen goals that you saw last night. I mean, it was a whitewashing. I don't know where the Rangers have been hiding the last 2 months, because that wasn't what I saw last night. Last night was the Rangers that won the President's Trophy last year. It was a completely different team.
Well, we're going to get into that 7-goal victory over the Islanders in a little bit. But few headliners to start the show today. Let's talk about clinchers. The Washington Capitals clinch first in the East with their shootout win over Carolina on Thursday. Carolina clinched second place in the Metro with that point, and they will now face the New Jersey Devils and have home ice in that series. So that is the first of the 8 first-round series that are locked in place. And the Devils clinched their playoff spot by virtue of the Rangers' loss to Philadelphia on Wednesday. So, you keeping up with all that?
Yeah, I am. But you know what's odd that I find is that they clinch first place in the East. Washington does. There is no status in the NHL for ending in first place in your conference. I hadn't thought of that before. There is for first place in the entire league, but first place in the conference, which used to be the Prince of Wales Trophy or the Clarence Campbell Bowl, no longer is that way. It is now you win that when you are ticketed to go to the final. So it's quite an achievement to end in first place in your conference. There should be some recognition of that, don't you think?
Perhaps, but at the same time, the Capitals still do have a shot at the President's Trophy as we come down to the final week of play in the NHL. On the other side of the coin, teams that were eliminated since we last spoke on Wednesday, Vancouver and Utah, were both eliminated by virtue of Minnesota's Wild win against San Jose on Wednesday. Let's hit now some of the races. And I'm going to start today in the Atlantic. On Wednesday, Toronto, coming off a loss the night before in Florida, goes back-to-back. And they win in overtime in Tampa, 4-3. Matthew Knies with a hat trick, which included the overtime winner. He's up to 29 goals this season. Mitch Marner, goal and 2 assists. Matthews, 3 assists. When you consider, we always talk about the core 4 in Toronto, that Knies is likely going to hit 30 goals, Bobby McMahon hitting 20. And what an augmentation to an already dynamic offense. And the look of the Leafs, I believe, is going to be clearly different going into the playoffs. And they have certainly solidified their hold now with a 3-point lead in the Atlantic as they look to clinch first place at some point in the next few days.
Yeah, they're going to look different. And Matthew Knies is a power forward that the Leafs found and got into their lineup and has played great for them. Marner continues to do what Marner does. And Matthews, albeit not the goal scorer this year that he was last year, certainly has been contributing and wearing the C and carrying that. And then the guy that gave him the C, Tavares, is having a great year. And we're not even mentioning William Nylander, who's having a fantastic season. So, it'll be interesting to see the Leafs in the playoffs, how hard they can play. Craig Berube may have some secret sauce for the playoffs that he had with St. Louis. Who knows? But they're still going to have to prove themselves in the playoffs to the Toronto fans. That's what this is all about.
But with the goaltending of Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll, they're also more competent in net than they have been in recent years. And I think Brad Treliving has done a great job putting this team in position to make a run. And that, of course, includes the head coach. So I like what I'm seeing from this club.
I agree. And we started the season in a much different mindset about the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's quite a rise in opinion on the Toronto Maple Leafs.
So if the Leafs can win 3 out of their last 4, they will wrap up the Atlantic, which leaves Tampa Bay and Florida fighting for home ice advantage in the first round in a 2-3 matchup. On Thursday, the Panthers beat Detroit 4-1. Brad Marchand with his first goal as a Panther, Alex Barkov with his 20th. The Red Wings now 1 point away from missing the playoffs for the 9th straight season.
It's too bad. I mean, I feel for Stevie Yzerman and that group. But how bad can you feel for the Red Wing fans? They did have 24 straight years of being in the playoffs. So, I mean, you had to know there was going to be a bit of a lull after you go 24 straight.
But 9 straight?
It's tough. It's too long. It's too long. It shouldn't have taken 9 non-playoff seasons to get back. It should have been a bit quicker than that. I really like some of the personnel they've got. It just hasn't worked out.
And when you consider that this club had a pair of 7-game winning streaks under Todd McClellan after taking over this season and still not able to get it done.
It's tough. I can only imagine how they feel there in Detroit in the office and how frustrating it must be.
Let's just put a bow on the Atlantic Division. Tampa Bay with a 1-point lead over Florida. The Lightning have 4 games left, the Panthers 3, so they are still in the driver's seat despite their overtime loss that we mentioned in Toronto on Wednesday. Let's head over to the Metro, where, as we mentioned at the head, the Capitals have clinched first in the East with a shootout over Carolina on Thursday. Great pregame ceremony celebrating Alex Ovechkin's 895th career goal. The Hurricanes came over, shook Ovi's hands, as they probably should have done. But, you know, when you consider what took place the previous Wednesday with a lot of animosity between the clubs, it was kind of neat to see them greeting each other before the game. However, Jaden Chatfield did have to answer for that takedown of Connor McMichael in their game last Wednesday. Brendan Duhane and Chatfield engaged in a fight. It was all done after that. And for the rest of the night, there were only 4 minor penalties. So Pierre-Luc Dubois, the only goal in the shootout. But what I want to bring up here is Carolina was up 2-0 in this game, 34-10 in shot attempts. Then the Caps score 4 straight. They take a 4-2 lead. And Carolina scores 2 goals to force the overtime. Seth Jarvis with his 31st with 1:45 left was the equalizer in this game. And a couple of things to look at here from both perspectives. Carolina has now lost 4 straight. And the Capitals were not playing well leading up to Ovi's record-breaking goal. So even though both clubs get points out of this game, neither team is playing particularly well right now. As a matter of fact, they're not playing well at all.
Washington didn't play well at the UBS Arena when Ovechkin got the goal. I don't know how you could play well when everything is focused on one guy and there's a lot of drinking going on after the game and celebrations going on with the players after the game and nobody getting home until the middle of the night and all that kind of stuff. We'll find out how great of a coach Spencer Carberry is now because he's going to have to straighten this ship out quick. He's got 4 games to get it straightened out before the playoffs come because they are not playing well. And at the other end, Rod Brindamore is going to have to get his group playing a lot better when they head into the playoffs, although you got to think that New Jersey without Hughes and without Hamilton, Carolina has drawn the long straw on this one.
And now they have an entire week left to really get their game straightened out and prepare for a specific opponent now that matchup is locked in and they will have home ice. other Metro games, and these all have to do with clubs still alive for that second wild card position. The Rangers split a pair of games, as we mentioned before, lost 8-5 to Philadelphia on Wednesday. The Flyers somehow managed to score 6 goals in the third period. Tyson Foerster with his first career hat trick, and 6 other players with 2 points for the Flyers. Artemi Panarin with his 300th career goal, and Mika Zibanejad finally gets out of his coma with 4 assists. And then, as we had spoken about right at the beginning, the Rangers then go into UBS Arena with a 9-2 win over the Islanders. Here's a rarity. All 18 skaters on the Rangers were pluses. Panarin, 2 goals and an assist. Brett Bedard, 2 goals. Adam Fox, 3 assists. But Igor Shesterkin still has to make 45 saves in this game.
What you failed to mention was that Philadelphia goes into Madison Square Garden. That game was not in Philadelphia. It was in the Garden. And so that's 10 times worse. You know what it's like when you lose 8-5 to Philadelphia in Madison Square Garden and get blown out and look like pure dog crap? That's how the Rangers looked. They looked horrible. And last night, yeah, they won 9-2. Why? Islanders didn't play that great, and their goaltending was horrible. And at the other end, Shesterkin was fantastic. So, as I said at the beginning, this Ranger team last night looked like the Ranger team of last year, the way they were scoring goals and their talent just coming out all over the place. But this has been a pitiful ending to this season for the New York Rangers. Just pitiful.
You could group the Islanders right in there. And perhaps fittingly, both of them are 1 point away from being eliminated. And that could happen on Friday if Montreal simply gets the game to overtime against Ottawa. Columbus manages to stay alive with a 3-2 win over Buffalo. They were down 2-0, but James Van Riemsdyk scores late in the first. And then Zach Aston Reese and Boone Jenner, 2:42 apart early in the third. Jet Greaves gets called up for this game. Elvis Merzlikins was sidelined with an undisclosed injury. He had 39 saves. So the Blue Jackets survive, and the Sabres' 5-game winning streak comes to an end.
And I thought that Tarasov would be in net last night, knowing that Merzlikins was injured. But as you said, Jet Greaves got called up, and he was in net for Columbus and then gets the victory there at their own barn over the Buffalo Sabres.
Good on Columbus still to have the fortitude to push forward in this game. They keep themselves alive, and it's kind of a signature win about what they've been all about this season. Western Wild Card. Aren't games supposed to be tightening up as we get closer to the playoffs? And we have seen 7-6, 6-5, 8-5. And on Wednesday, the Minnesota Wild welcome back Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson-Ek, and they get an 8-7 overtime win against the San Jose Sharks. So let's set this bad boy up for a second. Eriksson-Ek missed 21 games with a lower body injury. He scores 4 goals. Second Wild player ever to have a 4-goal game after Marian Gaborik. Kaprizov scores 2 goals, has an assist, and one of those 2 was the overtime winner. He had missed 28 straight games and 40 out of his last 43. Matt Boldy with 4 assists. Matt Zuccarello with 3 assists. And on the Shark side of things, Macklin Celebrini, his first career hat trick with 2 assists. Will Smith, a goal and 3 assists, including the game-tying goal with 52 seconds left. This was a game that the Sharks were down 7-4 in the third period. So if you want a good look at what the future of the San Jose Sharks has in store, this was on full display in addition to the heroics by Eriksson-Ek and Kaprizov.
Minnesota is a very low-scoring team. They have been all season. They've been like the LA Kings. So this was wide open, wild, wild west stuff going on with the San Jose Sharkies.
Marc-Andre Fleury, 7 goals against in the win. It may be his last ever home game because we certainly expected Philip Gustafsson will be the starting goaltender in the playoffs for the Wild. The Wild do have one more home game before this season ends, and that's their last game of the season against Anaheim.
Right, and I would think that unless that game means more than we would think it would mean, that they would play Marc-Andre Fleury in that game, I would think. But the other thing that they have is back-to-back games coming up in Calgary and then in Vancouver. So Fleury's going to have to play one of those, I would think. But you never know. If Minnesota feels that they've got a better chance to win both games with Gustafsson, they'll play him.
If Minnesota beats Calgary on Friday, they will clinch a spot in the playoffs and perhaps get Marc-Andre Fleury at least one more game. Because the Flames on Wednesday drop a painful 4-3 overtime loss in Anaheim. Flames had a 3-1 lead with 4:42 left. Frank Vitrano and Cutter Gauthier, who has really had a terrific season with the Ducks, they score 8 seconds apart to tie the game, and then Gauthier gets his second in overtime to win it, both assisted by Leo Carlson. So let's talk about the Flames first, in that they are going to rue letting that point get away, even though they're still alive in the Western race. This is a bad loss.
It is a bad loss. It's a bad loss no matter what time of year it is, no matter what the circumstances are. I don't think that Calgary's going to catch St. Louis or Minnesota anyway, but you never want to lose like that. We've always said the worst way to lose is have the lead and blow it. That's the worst way. You're better off losing the whole game, and then it's at least expected. But I'm sure there were some people in Calgary wanting to throw the remote through their TV screen watching that.
This was a tough one for sure. But from the Anaheim side of things, we talked about the young stars in San Jose. Gauthier, Carlson, McTavish, and even Trevor Zegras, who I had mentioned probably during our summer coolers as early as that maybe the best move would be for him to be moved on. But his play has improved, and perhaps it's because he's not being looked upon as the savior, that there's now a lot of good young talent that has been brought forward by Pat Verbeek, and not being in that spotlight, I think, has helped Zegras' game.
Well, it probably has, because there was a lot of pressure put on him after, he got there, he was a one-man band. And then here's this guy trying to be a franchise player, which I don't think he is. He's a good player, and he can be part of a good team, but he can't be the lead dog. So good on Pat Verbeek, all the young talent that he's got in there. They look to be slowly turning a corner, and they certainly elevated themselves out of that grouping with the with the Sharks and the Blackhawks. Yep. in the very bottom of the league.
Western wild card, Minnesota and St. Louis, both with 93 points. The Wild have played 79 games. The Blues have played 80. Calgary is 5 points back of both of them, but they still have 4 games remaining, including an enormous game Friday night against the Wild. Central Division, Winnipeg and Dallas, number 1 and 2. This was probably going to be the last chance for the Stars to get themselves in a position to perhaps overtake the Jets for first. Didn't happen. No question in this game. The Jets win 4-0. Connor Hellebuck, 23 saves, 8 shutout of the season, 45th of his career, and 45th win of the season. And Kyle Connor with 2 goals, he reaches 40 for the second time. So with this game being in Dallas, that's a hell of a statement by Winnipeg. And the Stars continue to stagger towards the finish here. They've lost 4 in a row.
We've talked about a few ships here that got to get righted. The Washington Capitals, the Carolina Hurricanes, and now the Dallas Stars. All of those Stanley Cup contenders not heading into the last week of the season in the best of all shapes. We'll see who can get themselves turned around.
I watched a good portion of that game, and there was no question that they looked to be the superior team. in a very competitive division.
It's great for Cheveldayoff and his crew there, and for Scott Arniel in his first year at the helm of the Winnipeg Jets, but everything in Winnipeg, of course, will be judged on the playoffs as always. And Connor Hellebuck, going for his second straight Vezina, almost assured of winning it, will be judged on his playoff histrionics.
The one thing that we do know is that they have certainly put themselves in better position in that they will likely play either Minnesota or St. Louis. We still leave that Calgary piece out there. But they're creating an easier path for themselves by being able to avoid Colorado, which Dallas is going to play if the Jets can get just 1 point out of their last 3 games, because the Avalanche drop a 4-1 decision to the Canucks. So the one thing that we do know is that the Stars will have home ice in the first round by virtue of that Avs loss, because Colorado is now locked into third. Kiva Sherwood and Dakota Joshua with a goal and an assist. Kevin Lankinen with 31 saves. And Nathan MacKinnon was held out of this game due to an undisclosed injury. And it's likely now that he will be sat for the remaining games of the Colorado schedule. And essentially, that cedes the scoring title to Nikita Kucherov. But in reality, what is there to gain besides a personal honor? What is there to gain for the Avalanche by playing MacKinnon for the rest of the season?
Well, there's nothing. They want to make sure that he's absolutely ready to go for the playoffs. And so if they're locked into that spot and they know they're going to have to go to Texas to start the playoffs, get MacKinnon as healthy as possible.
Pacific Division. Vegas beat Seattle on Thursday 2-1. Ivan Barbashev and William Karlsson with the goals. Aiden Hill, 24 saves. Vegas needs 1 win in their remaining 3 to clinch the Pacific. They will get either Minnesota or St. Louis or Calgary in the opening round. Meanwhile, the Kings with a 6-1 win against Anaheim. Kevin Fiala, remember when he was benched earlier in the season by Jim Miller? Scores a pair. Quentin Byfield, who has had a terrific second half of the season, goal and an assist. Kempe and Kuzmenko with 3 assists apiece. They extend their lead to 4 points over Edmonton, and they have the tiebreaker for second place in the Pacific. So if they are able to win just 2 out of their last 4 games, they will indeed have that home ice advantage in the 4th consecutive playoff meeting in the opening round with the Oilers. The Oilers, by the way, with a 4-3 win on Wednesday, and they welcome back Connor McDavid. After missing 8 games with a lower body injury, he had 3 assists, including setting up Connor Brown for his second goal of the game. It was the winner with just 21 seconds left in regulation. And just before that goal, Calvin Pickard stopped Nathan Walker from right in the crease. And this came right at the end of a penalty that McDavid had taken. So, big win for the Oilers. Great to have McDavid back. But it just feels like every game that the Oilers are in this year is some sort of taffy pull.
My own personal expectations for the Oilers aren't great this year. I can't see them possibly repeating what they did last year. However, you can't count Draisaitl and McDavid out until they're out. It's going to be interesting. Again, the Kings and the Oilers, the old thing again. Can the Kings finally do something against the Oilers in the playoffs and go on to the second round?
We're going to have our playoff preview next Friday. If you had to pick this series now, who do you think wins?
I got to say the Kings, just because of the consistency that they've shown. And the Oilers haven't been able to show that. And the Kings can shut teams down. And that home ice advantage is a big deal when you talk about LA because they're so strong at home. So if I had to pick it today, I would pick Anze Kopitar and his group.
That was the 30th win of the season at home for the Kings at Crypto.com Arena. And certainly may come into play once they get into that opening round series.
Pretty good if you're a Kings season ticket holder that you go to 41 home games and you've won 30 of them already. So 3 out of 4 games you win. You get to see a win. That's always the way it should be. Win all your home games and everybody's happy.
Them and Carolina, the only 2 teams that have reached 30 wins at home this season. 2 other games, because we are a full-service podcast. Chicago beat Boston 5-2 on Thursday. Ryan Donato with his 30th. He is a UFA at the end of this season. Nick Foligno with 2 goals, and David Pastrnak just continues to put up goals for the Bruins. He had his 42nd. Nashville beats Utah 4-3 in a shootout. Ryan O'Reilly with a goal and an assist. Philip Forsberg with the shootout winner. UC Soros with 39 saves. And those Predators, way too little, way too late.
Yeah, no, it is way too late. The other thing I want to mention about Chicago, that ugly loss for Boston was at home in front of their own fans who know that Chicago's at the very bottom of the league, and that had to be ugly.
It kind of just sums up the kind of year that the Bruins have had. And, this is one that you just want to put in the scrap heap and then start working towards your future.
And there's some buildings in the league, when I think about the home team getting drubbed, that I think, oh, you'd hate to be in there. One is Madison Square Garden. It becomes completely ugly. And the other is the TD Garden, where it's Boston. They're not going to put up with this. Philly used to be like that, but they've had so many years now of trying to rebuild and get going. I think they're more, used to it, so to speak. I still think it's probably that way in Montreal. If Montreal gets drubbed right in the Bell Center, that I can't imagine their fans. And I would say if Toronto, which doesn't usually get drubbed at home at the Scotiabank Center, but I think that might be ugly. But it's funny how you go around the league and certain places are much uglier than others. And usually they're the ones that are in the epicenter of the city.
Yeah.
They're right in the heart of the city, and that can get ugly. But anyway, I digress.
You didn't digress at all. Digress. I had a journalist. Which one?
Not Zegress. Digress.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I had a journalism professor who took particular issue with using the word drubbed, and that you brought it up 3 or 4 times in describing that. I thought it was a great use of drubbed.
Why did he have they took a drubbing? Isn't there a drubbing?
He was a guy from Rochester, old-time writer, and just didn't like it. Herb Jackson was his name, and he did not like drubbed.
Is there such a word as drubbing? That team got drubbed?
Yes. We're using it, so it must be a word.
No, it doesn't mean it's a word. I mean, there's a lot of things that we say that people say that aren't really in the dictionary. Yeah. But I thought drubbing is a kind word. It's not an ugly word. I mean, take an ass kicking, that's uglier than saying a drubbing. A rout. How about a rout? They got routed.
Well, we can keep coming up with words for it. Some notes and more somber news. We started this week on such a high with Alex Ovechkin setting the NHL all-time goal scoring mark. We lost Greg Millen on Monday, and then Ray Shero, Penguins general manager for their cup win in 2009. He had actually traded for Bill Guerin at the deadline and was a senior advisor to Guerin's Wild team. Was a GM for the New Jersey Devils as well. He passed away at age 62.
Yeah, I know Ray well. Just sad. I mean, he's such a young man, such a good man. And, he made a trade when he was GM of New Jersey that didn't get enough accolades for. He made a trade with Edmonton, bringing Taylor Hall into the Devils. Yeah. And that year, Taylor Hall won MVP of the NHL. in a Devils uniform. And I mean, just for that alone, he should have been heralded for that trade. But then, in Pittsburgh in 2009, the coaching changed. Dan Bilesma gets the helm of the Penguins. They win the cup in Detroit. Nobody expected them to win that because if you remember that Detroit had won the year before against the same two finalists, correct? It was it was quite a thing to see Sidney Crosby win the Stanley Cup, along with Malkin, of course, and so on. But getting back to Ray Shero, it's far too young. There's just no words for it. It's stunning because I've known Ray for a long time, and to know that I won't see him ever again is really tough to take.
And of course, the son of late head coach Fred Shero, who also went too young.
Yes, for sure. And Freddie the Fog, who was the coach of those two Philadelphia Flyers Stanley Cups in 74 and 75. And I actually was at Fred's funeral. Ray and I had a good relationship. It's just stunning to me that he's gone.
We're going to move back onto the ice, not the easiest transition to make. We just mentioned Nathan MacKinnon sitting out for the Avs and looking at whether there's any value in him playing for the rest of the regular season. And I think the same could be said about Brady Tkachuk, who was last played on March 30th. And with the Senators in the playoffs now, why would you bring him back? Unless maybe it's for the last regular season game, just so he could get his hands and his touch back. What are your feelings on that one?
Yeah, I think it's all up to Brady. I think at that point, if he's healthy, you leave it up to him and say, is it important to you to get into some games here before the playoff games and see what he says? I mean, perhaps you play him against Chicago. You figure out how hard that game is against Carolina. Is anybody going to need that game? Is it going to be tough? Carolina's locked in. If Ottawa is locked in at that point, that game may be a nothing burger. So I think you leave it up to the player and the doctor, of course.
He has said that if these were playoff games now, he'd be playing. But if you're Travis Green and you're Steve Stamkos and you're trying to make a decision, do you maybe just play him on the power play? I mean, Carolina has nothing to play for. And if you get him into a game just on special teams, you're probably not going to have the physical engagement that you would have at 5-on-5. It gives him a chance to feel the puck and play under game conditions.
Yeah, but it's all up to the doctor. And if the doctor clears him and says, yeah, you can play, and Brady says, yeah, I want to play because I want to get my rhythm back, you play him regular player, because he could get hurt on the power play just as easily as he can get hurt in the regular shift. So I wouldn't think they would do that. If they're going to bring him back, let him get into game situations and get him ready, or else hold him out.
Somebody that's close to returning, Tyler Seguin for Dallas, who took contact in Thursday's morning skate and is nearing return. He had hip surgery in early December. His last game was on December 1st, so that is certainly going to be a boost for Dallas. But if they're not going to tidy up their own end of the rink, all of these dynamic forwards that they have, it may not matter.
They've got some work to do, but I think Peter DeBoer will straighten his group out. But that is a big addition to have Tyler Seguin back in their lineup come playoffs.
One player that appears that he will be on the move during the offseason, Brock Besser of the Canucks, saying it's unlikely that he is going to return to the team. He's the longest current serving member of Vancouver, 9 seasons, 550 games. The entire season in Vancouver, as we have documented since October, has been a struggle. And is this just simply a case where maybe the Canucks are better next season, but after 9 years, he just feels, I need to change the scenery and I got to get out of here?
If I'm a Canucks fan, I'm completely irate with the Canucks right now because First of all, we trade Bo Horvat and get nothing back now. We have nothing to show for Bo Horvat. We trade JT Miller this season, and we have Mancini to show for that. Who's okay? He's an operative back there on defense, but it's JT Miller. I mean, he's basically one of the star players on the team. And now we don't trade Besser, and we don't re-sign him, and he leaves for nothing. So we've got those three players all gone, and we got nothing to show for it. Like, how are the Canucks going to be better? I don't understand what's going on there. There's certain rules of managing a team. If a guy's going to walk, you got to trade him or you got to re-sign him. You got to do one or the other. You can't just let him walk. But that's what Besser's going to do. And he obviously wants out of there, or he would have signed earlier. I don't understand why they kept him. I guess because they thought they could make the playoffs if he was there. But it's sort of a kick in the teeth for him to turn around and say, yeah, I'm probably not coming back here. Amazing.
Patrick Alvin certainly going to have his work cut out for him.
The whole crew there is going to have their work cut out for them to replace players like that. Like Brock Besser is a hell of a player. He's a star player. And he's going to walk and he'll be somewhere else next year. He might be the most sought after free agent in the league this summer.
I was just going to say that. A sniper, hard right-handed shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to look for him.
For sure.
A couple of other notes. Guys that haven't even played in the NHL. Chad Lucius, who's the center for Winnipeg, he was their first-round pick, 18th overall in 2021, retired Tuesday after being diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a hereditary disorder that affects the connective tissue that stabilizes and supports the joints and organs throughout the body. This is a very painful malady that this young man has been dealing with. And, Neil, we talk a lot about mental health off camera. And I know how important this is to you. And this is a player who, when he was drafted, you have to think was envisioning a career of 12 to 15 years, making big money, and then you decide what you're going to do afterwards. But now, here's a young man that at 21 no longer has a career in hockey in front of him and has to figure his life out now.
First and foremost, got to get medical help, and hopefully he'll overcome this disorder to live a normal life. He's only 21 years of age. He's from Lawrence, Kansas, or born there. It's a terrible story, but it would be a terrible story if he was an accountant, not just because he's a hockey player.
Yeah.
Life comes before everything, and he's obviously been advised that he shouldn't continue with a hockey career with this kind of malady. So let's just hope he gets himself healthy and can go on to have a productive life and be a good citizen, because it's going to be a long road.
All the best to him. Remember the other day when we were talking about the next Guy Lafleur, Ivan Demidov?
Yeah.
What did you call it? A death knell before he even steps onto NHL ice?
For calling a guy Guy Lafleur before he's even had a game in the league.
That was 54 years ago when Lafleur was drafted. But Demidov has set foot in Canada, landed in Toronto the other day. Number 93 jerseys, which is what he's going to wear, selling out in Montreal. His debut could be tonight, but it's more likely it's going to be the home game against Chicago on Monday. Tickets in the lower bowl at the Bell Center, up to $1,000 in the secondary market. So this guy better be worth it. That's all I got to say. With all those accolades coming in, and he was the 5th overall pick last year, and this guy's getting a king's welcome.
And he's playing for the Montreal Canadiens, not the LA Kings. He is getting a welcome. But isn't this the way of the league right now, the way of sports, the way of the world? Everybody goes crazy when a young guy comes in and that he could be the next star. So let's run out and buy his jersey and all this kind of stuff. We'll see how he turns out, and we're not even going to know for a while whether or not he's the real deal.
But how exciting is this in Montreal now that the club is on the verge of the playoffs? Their young players have been terrific. Marty St. Louis is going to get some Coach of the Year votes for getting his team to the cusp of the postseason. And, oh, by the way, now you've got Demidov to join in on this little ride that the Canadians are on.
For Montreal, for their management, for everybody, it's all a high. And I remember when I brought Doug Waite and Tony Amonte to the Rangers when they were just coming out of college. We took them out of college and brought them in. It's exciting. It's an exciting time to have young potential stars coming onto your team. And so I wish Montreal and Demidov all the best. We need as many stars in the league as we can get. So let's hope he is what people are saying about him and he turns out to be a star for the Habs.
If he's half that, it will be worth the while.
Yeah, for sure.
College hockey. Boston University going to the Frozen Four final by beating Penn State on Thursday in the later game. But in the early game, do you like to pump your chest, young man?
I got nothing to do with it. I'm happy for Western Michigan University as they beat Denver, a really good school, in second overtime period. And the Broncos dominated. I mean, they outshot Denver 47-22 in the game. So I guess they deserved the win, but you never know in double overtime who's going to win. And so Western goes on. Not only is it their first time in the Frozen Four, but now it's their first time to challenge for a national title. They've never been close to that level.
And to defeat the defending champions to get to that final is pretty special. So we will update certainly on Monday on short shifts, along with the Hobey Baker winner, which will be announced on Friday. So 25 games this weekend. Many of them have to do with seeding and standing placement and whatnot, but we're not going to talk about all of them. But the one that I'm really looking forward to is on Friday, Montreal and Ottawa. If the Canadians win this game in regulation, they take out the Rangers, Islanders, Red Wings, and Blue Jackets and clinch a playoff berth. Just amazing.
Really is. When you think at the beginning of the season, what we thought would be Montreal's destiny this season, we never dreamed that they would actually be in the playoffs. And it's really good for them and good for the city of Montreal, who's a hockey-starved city.
Also looking forward to Minnesota at Calgary because the Wild can clinch a berth and the Flames can keep themselves alive.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting one. Although I think Calgary's quickly slipping, but nonetheless, that'll be a good one to look out for.
And on Saturday, Montreal at Toronto. It'll be a back-to-back for the Canadians, but more so here for the Maple Leafs, who are trying to put a stranglehold on that top spot in the Atlantic.
Yeah, and you got to think if Montreal is able to win in Ottawa, they're going to breathe deep, and Toronto's going to have not only a tired team coming in from Ottawa in the Montreal Canadiens, but they're also going to have a team that might relax a little bit, having clinched the playoffs. But we'll see. It's going to be a tough game in Ottawa. Ottawa's not going to let Montreal just come in and win.
Correct. And the game I'm looking at on Sunday, Edmonton at Winnipeg, as the Jets look to lock down the top spot in the Western Conference and get themselves one step closer to the President's Trophy.
And I want to see, too, how Edmonton stacks up against Winnipeg and how Edmonton looks here near the end of the season, because we were talking about their series with the Kings. I'm predicting today that the Kings would win that series. I can change that prediction, so don't hold it. But I'm interested to see how the Oilers do against the Jets, who are finishing this season firing on all cylinders.
Schedule change coming up next week. Short shifts on Monday and Tuesday instead of the usual wraparound on Monday, which we are moving to Wednesday. And on that show, Neil and I will celebrate the career of legendary broadcaster Sam Rosen. And Neil, for us to be able to have Sam get his take on his career, Rangers are not going to make the playoffs. So the show with Sam will drop the night before his last ever game.
It's going to be great. I've known Sam for many, 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 many years, and I really look forward to having him on our show.
And a week from today, being Friday, our playoff preview. So a lot that we got to gear up for here, partner.
It's exciting. It's this time of year is the best time of year when we're getting into the playoffs and we're through a long 82-game schedule. And although there's been a lot of fun during the regular season, too, there have been a lot of good things go on and a lot of great guests we've had and a lot of fun, some great writers and people from around the league. So you got to just keep it going now through the playoffs.
Best is yet to come. Have a great weekend.